you, Mr. Griffin, and your colleagues for coming in. It's good to see you again. Thank you. Okay, there's a couple of things I would like to cover, please. First, on delivery, we've had a good discussion this morning with MBI, and the deputies have been able to ask questions in relation to delivery. We now know that I think there's a small number of connections relative to the number of passings, which of course is less than it might have been, and we've heard about that. Now, what we've heard in your own statement, I wanted to talk to you about how you're going to hedge bets on that, on the delivery challenge, because there is a delivery challenge at the moment, and some of it is understandably down to COVID-19. You have said that in your own statement, but Minister Smith has gone further in the Dáil and acknowledged that some of the delay, in his view, is NBI, and NBI have discussed that this morning as well, with difficulties about bedding in and so on. Could you outline your understanding of the source of delay beyond COVID-19?
So I won't go back over the COVID-19 issues, Deputy, because they're well covered in the letter that I provided the committee on the 17th of January. I didn't hear the NBI session this morning, but I understand they covered that to a significant extent as well. I mean, the COVID-19 impacts were very significant. I think one of the things that they found challenging as well is when they actually went out to do the build on the ground, they were seeing things that they couldn't anticipate at the time that the contract was being put together in terms of the condition of the underground network, and that has led to challenges in terms of addressing the deficiencies as identified, engaging with AIR to have them remedied, and ensuring that there were proper governance arrangements for all of that work to be pulled together. Now, as I said, good progress made with AIR in terms of additional poles and duct to be rehabilitated under the programme, and that's a positive. It is important that both parties remain engaged to make sure that any wrinkles that there are in the Make Ready programme are identified, are escalated, are addressed, and that there is an appropriate governance and oversight mechanism in place to make sure that that is as smooth as possible. When you're building on an existing network which spans, depending on whether you're talking about premises passed or premises connected, somewhere in the region of 99 to 146 kilometres of fibre cable, and you're talking about 10 to 15,000 kilometres of duct to be reused, you are going to come across those difficulties.
Yeah, but you're also going to come across, Mr. Griffin, it's fair to say that in urban areas there's quite a lot of fibre there already.
There is.
You know, so there's quite a lot of opportunity provided by that. So I regard it as a sort of a double-edged balance, if you don't mind me saying, and it's useful to go through it in that way. We have heard that. But what's the source then, if it was underestimated to that scale, where is that attributable to? Is it attributable to the quality of the design? Who oversaw that? What's the source of that?
So I think part of the design would have made assumptions in relation to the quality of the network. So, and that's fine, and that's built in. I think in reality, when you have crews going on the ground, you only get the sense at that point when you're starting to do the work on the ground as to the extent of the difficulty or challenges within the network, and that has to be addressed.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Griffin. You have said that already, but was it not possible, for example, to do a random sampling exercise?
That would have been done.
And so the results then, when they went out, were at variance with the random sampling exercise. Was there a difficulty with the design of the random sampling exercise? What I'm curious about is how far divergent it appears to be. Like we're talking about delays, real delays in terms of design, both at high level and, as we discussed this morning, low level design, that are at variance from the assessment that had been done. What I'm asking is, to what is that attributable? Why would somebody do a random sampling exercise that was so at variance with the outcome,
well, I think
the overall outcome?
When you do any random sampling exercise, it is simply that. It is a random sample.
Sorry, Mr. Griffin.
You size your sample and you design your sample appropriately in accordance what would have been best practice insofar as the design was concerned, the design work was concerned. But when you go out on the ground and you are installing, surveying, designing, you do come across things that wouldn't have been anticipated at that stage.
You do,
so I'm
Mr.
saying
Griffin, you
part
do.
of that is a challenge.
You do, Mr. Griffin, but I'm familiar with research methods. I know how to conduct random sample designs. And what I'm curious about is whoever designed that random sample and whoever is responsible for that has designed a sample and executed a sample that is at variance significantly with the outcome, because the outcome has significant delays as a consequence of finding things in lots of places that weren't expected.
So what I'm saying, you asked me were there things over and above COVID that have presented difficulties.
Yes.
What I'm saying to you is this has been identified
Yes.
as a difficulty.
And I'm asking you who's responsible, or to what is that attributable? I've
That's
asked
a
you now
different question.
but it's the question I've asked a couple of times.
That determination will be made by the department as part of the remedial planning process. So what we are doing at the moment, we engage with MBI on an ongoing basis. They have come to us and said delays have arisen. They have looked for relief under the contract. Fergal, Patrick and the entire team look at that and say, well, what is legitimate in terms of a claim for relief? And that assessment will be made so as to where the balance of responsibility lies, what relief, if any, should be afforded to the contractor. All of that will be addressed as part of
the answer to my question in relation to attributable, the question I asked some time ago is, we will come to that when we do our review. We will assess that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's fine. But you also asked what other things may have caused the problem. So I'm just trying to articulate.
So, for example, have you had a conversation directly about AIR with AIR about the delays?
So we've spoken to AIR in terms of, I suppose, when you look at a fundamental underpinning of this project, it is about reuse of infrastructure. There is a 25-year make-ready programme agreed between AIR and MBI. Conversations have been had by MBI and AIR. Minister Smith facilitated a meeting pre-Christmas with the CEO and chair of AIR and the CEO of MBI, which I attended along with Mr. O'Hoban. And what we sought to do was to scope out other things that may be doable in terms of speeding up the delivery of the make-ready programme.
So two questions on that. In that meeting, is it clear that AIR or other contractors, I don't want to limit it to AIR, received what they needed to be able to price and build? Did they get that in a timely way?
So we need to. So again, going back to the relief and what may or may not be the issue in terms of
back to the review.
That will be called out.
And so then in terms of your consideration about what other things you might do, are you engaging with other telecom operators to look at how you might deliver more quickly? Like, are there urban centres, for example, where I've mentioned there's already fibre there? Can they be released in any way to be delivered more quickly?
So part of the design of the entire contract, there was a call at various stages over the course of the procurement process to identify infrastructure that could be reused. That has been identified. We're using, for example, the state-owned metropolitan area networks. We're using other private infrastructure, backhaul infrastructure to use it.
I have limited time. I don't mean to be rude and I don't mean to interrupt you, but you know that I have limited time. And my question is it something that you're considering?
So you're speaking specifically about the urban areas?
I'm speaking specifically about the opportunity in terms of delivering more quickly, specifically where there's already fibre in place.
Yes.
Is it a consideration of the department, an active consideration of the department, in the meeting that you had that you've described to the committee, to release areas potentially for more quick delivery?
Absolutely. So MBI are running a tender process at the moment to deal with what are termed amber spots within blue areas, so infill areas that might need to be addressed. So a tender process is being run.
And when will that be completed?
So we expect that the tender process will be completed very shortly. They'll run a pilot exercise to see if it works, and that we'll have it fully in place by the end of the year.
Q1, Q2, very shortly?
So as I understand it, that the tender process will be completed in Q1.
Okay.
And then we'll seek to mobilise that quickly and address some of the concerns that have been identified.
We'll come back to it, so maybe with the review.
Okay.
On the funding side of things, again, I just want to look at it from the committee's perspective, just about how this is being considered by the department. I mean, there's clearly the opportunity to change shareholders. I note in your own statement, the Minister has the right of consent under the contract in respect of changes of ownership. That's something we've discussed with MBI this morning. Are there circumstances in which the department would not give consent? Has the department considered the scenario in which new investors may not be forthcoming?
So,
They're two different questions, but they're linked.
yeah. So so there are a range of controls in relation to control and ownership set out in the contract. The minister has a call over investors who may want to come in.
Yes.
There'll be determinations around whether they represent, whether they are a suitable investor. There are various controls and mechanisms that would be applied there. I might ask Fergal just to deal with some of the specifics around that.
Yeah, so under the contract, the determination is whether it's a suitable third party or an unsuitable third party. Now, an unsuitable third party is, again, broadly defined. Obviously, somebody might have been involved in criminality or something like that, wouldn't be a suitable third party. So the minister would clearly veto any such change of ownership that involved those sort of parties. So the contract is around, are they a suitable or an unsuitable third party?
Okay. So what I'm hearing is sort of absent that mark of criminality
Or some such, yeah.
or equivalent, there's no other circumstances in which they wouldn't give consent.
There would be a financial due diligence to make sure they're, again, appropriately financed and all that sort of thing. That's the normal, because again, they carry with them, whoever owns this carries with them all the same obligations under the contract as the current crowd.
That's why I'm asking. Yeah. Exactly, yes, because what you don't want is that it's a fait accompli, essentially.
Yeah. So it's equivalent from that point of view.
With the original contractor, is there a role for the NTMA in assessing any of that, or is it exclusively for the department, or did that happen at an earlier contractual stage? Was the NTMA involved?
Currently, if there's a change, it's exclusively with us. Pre-contract award, it was exclusively with us. However, we did have representatives from the NDFA on our panels evaluating the project.
Okay. This morning we heard from NBI that they have as an internal auditor PricewaterhouseCoopers. They also work for the department. Is there any concern in relation to that?
No, they don't work for the department.
Sorry.
PwC was part of the team originally. Our contractors at the moment are EY.
Just to clarify then, because our data
for
the committee is that the department has paid PwC close to €3 million for consultancy funding.
So they're no longer
So
part.
when did that cease?
That would have ceased in 2019. So
there's been no crossover where we've both had the same advisors, essentially.
No,
that's fine. That's fine. Thank you very much. The other question that I wanted to ask was in relation then to the joining up. If you can just explain this to me in a bit more detail. So we're paying NBI a subvention essentially to pass the houses. Let's talk then about the connections. Clearly, it's up then to the commercial operators to connect as well. Talk to me about who pays the cost for that. How's that work?
So there is a subsidy for connection. So when you look at the overall subsidy that's available for the project, there's about 600 million of that is for connections. So there is a subsidy payable for each home connected.
So that 600 is a subset of the overall?
Subset of the overall 2.6 cap max, yeah.
Okay, and that goes to the commercial connectors?
So that will go to NBI as subsidy to connect. And in fact, it's quite different, I think, compared to other international projects where that type of subsidy is not provided. The homeowner will have to provide the connection costs themselves, but the state has decided we're going to subsidise that.
And is that going to be universally applied then to all of the connections for the homeowners?
Yes, yeah.
So they'll all receive a subvention of some kind, both on the laying of the fibre and the connection?
Yes.
So just to explain how that works, National Broadband Ireland must connect anyone that makes a connection, unlike the commercial sector who can refuse a connection. And the current standard connection charge is €100 that NBI will charge Vodafone, Eircom, Regional Broadband, or any of the 50 operators that are selling. The retail operators therefore cannot charge the homeowner €1,000 or €2,000 or €4,000 to connect the home, which can happen in a commercial sector. So NBI are subvented to that because in rural Ireland, that's why this is non-commercial. The majority of homes will cost a significant amount to put in underground ducting, new poles, to a farmyard, 300 yards from the road, all that sort of thing. That's subsidised so that the consumer will get connection.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Just one last question then, again, going back to the financial stability piece. The reason that we're interested in it is because it's such a change in ownership and such a change in financial structure, potentially. From the department's perspective, do you have any guarantee? And this is why I'm asking about the implications of investors not coming in. What happens if it doesn't work? What happens if the company isn't financially sustainable? Where is the state in that then?
And unless further come in terms of the controls, particularly around, termination, and the event a termination event occurs, we don't foresee that, by the way.
No, neither do I, but it's worth asking the question.
Yeah.
So the current shareholders and investors are fully committed and they're guaranteed, and it's not secured, their investment is not secured. National Broadband Ireland over 25 years is expected to be profitable. In the event that it's not profitable, like any contract or any PPP, the contract allows for the minister to step in or to terminate. And there's also, like back in the day, Carillion, for example, you remember the schools. Again, the state sometimes in extraordinary circumstances may have to step in. Again, we don't envisage that here, but like all commercial contracts the state has with third parties, you make for these provisions that there are termination events, step in rights, all that sort of standard stuff.
So what is it? What is it then? Like?
Well, again, your first protocol might be to step in if it was in trouble. That's where step in means your first protocol is to try and sort it out without terminating it. If the business seems to be going off track, so that's the first protocol, and then you can step out if the business recovers. In the worst case scenario, if you have to terminate, well then in the event of a termination, the minister has the option to either take over the assets and or the business. So it all comes back to the state.